Hi everybody, I'm Ali. You've already actually asked the question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to ask it again anyway, in a more specific way. So how many of you have worked on a product or a feature that has failed? Okay, a few people. So if you haven't had this experience yet, I say that chances are it will happen to you at some point. And so hopefully this talk is going to be useful memory. And if it has happened to you already, this is going to be hopefully 30 minutes of quite useful therapy. So yeah, I'm a senior PM at Flo Health, and this is the feature that I manage. I manage the chatbot, Flo Health Assistant, and the chat area on Flo. But before, I've spent 2 years at Flo now, but before working at Flo, I spent 7 years at Bupa. So I worked in product or proposition, as it was once called, working in care homes, doing digital GP. So I worked in the ventures team. Before that, I worked in the old world of innovation, as it was called about 10 years ago, in Cancer Research UK. So developing new fundraising products. So, for this point in the talk, I normally have to give a bit of context because there's some people who often look a bit confused about what Flo is. So for the 50% of you who don't have periods, Flo is the largest period tracking app in the world right now. We're 3 times the size of our competitor. And we're able to accurately predict for women and people who menstruate with regular and irregular cycles when you're going to ovulate and when your period's going to be. And we do this, from teenagers all the way to menopause. So we support our users through a huge library of content, which is underpinned by an army of clinicians at Flo. Then we have our community, which is known as secret chats, where our users can all support each other on lots of issues, like family, relationships, PCOS, endometriosis, that sort of thing. And then we have the health assistant, the chatbot, which is what the area that I manage. And that really helps our users understand their bodies, understand their cycles better, understand what's going on, so that if something changes, you're more aware, more empowered to have a better conversation with your doctor. So, for those of you who put your hands up at the beginning, this graph might look quite familiar to you. So this is what tends to kind of the trajectory of what can happen as you head towards product failure. So you have a really good year 1, double your revenue in year 2, double it again in year 3, and then year 4 and year 5, you start to hit a plateau. And what happened in 2 of the products I've worked on is this in year 4, year 5. So being kind of shut down, and you're kind of just left wondering, why? What happened? But this happens absolutely everywhere. So it happens absolutely in the startup world, and there are many failures littered all over the place, but it definitely happens in big corporate businesses, and it happens in ventures teams, and it happens 100% in the charity sector. You'll hear fundraising products that you never hear of again a few years later. And it happened to me with this product specifically called Bupa On Demand, which I'm still getting over. So yeah, this is also a bit of a Viking funeral for Bupa On Demand, product that could have been so great. So I'm going to give you the story of Bupa On Demand and its ultimate fate. So Bupa On Demand was created because customers started phoning into Bupa and asking if they could self-pay for Bupa healthcare. And so the business was set up, and it had a huge market opportunity, and that's because of the sad state of our healthcare system in the UK. So a lot of people, do have private health insurance with their companies, but many do not. And for those of you, what's happened? Oh, it's back. For those of you who have to rely on the NHS, and this is pre-COVID, you could easily wait, 6 months to see a gynecologist. And if you were waiting for a treatment, particularly the top 10 with waiting times like things like hip replacements, knee replacements, cataracts, you could be waiting a year for an operation like that. So people are looking for alternatives. And the private healthcare system is a complete nightmare in the UK. Good luck trying to navigate it. So people kind of come to Bupa like expecting it, like expecting to be able to self-pay. And so we created this business where you were able to come to Bupa, use the whole Bupa network of consultants and physios, mental health therapists, and you could just, pay. You could book and pay for an appointment online. You could see somebody the next day, and then our team were able to put you in for diagnostics and treatments. So this went really well, and we had a really good few years, and then the business decided to set us down in year 5. So I was obviously left wondering at this point, like, how on earth does this happen to good products? And I've had a lot of conversations with people at product conferences. I've had a lot of wine to get over this. And yeah, it's really, really tough. But there are a few, not the red flags, but there are a few signs. So to understand where a product goes wrong, you often have to understand where it goes right. So that hockey stick trajectory that you see right at the start with products like this. So typically, to achieve that kind of early hockey stick growth, you normally have like a small product team who build the product. They're able to be given, enough freedom. This is easy in a startup, but somewhere like Bupa, we were given like the freedom to work in our little agile team away from the main business in a venture. And that was really fantastic for us to kind of get this thing built. And we did the research and we understood that like customers absolutely love this thing, and you feel this real sense of achievement when you know that you're onto something really, really good. Then you understand there's this clear business model. This thing is definitely going to make money. And then you build it and you actually start to get sales in, and you see that it's really going to bring in results. And that's when everybody gets really excited, because you bring in the results, you've got a proven business case, and they give you more money. And you feel like, I think as you alluded to, you feel like you're absolutely crushing it as a product team at this point. But like I said, there are some red flags, and those red flags are there, like even in those kind of early glory years, before you kind of hit the plateau. So what are the red flags? So you start to blame the systems and solutions. So you start to be like, this thing, we built it as a proof of concept many years ago, and now it's just no longer scalable for like the audience of our product. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's really like the go-to place. And certainly when I came into Flo, this is what my immediate reaction was. But it's not always the case, and things can be a lot more complex than that. So you may have found yourself still working in feature lists. So when you're an early kind of startup, often you've got somebody who's got like a really clear vision of what that product's going to be, and they kind of dictate what you're going to build. But by year 4, year 5, it shouldn't be like this anymore. So you shouldn't be working in a kind of feature list driven way. You need to become like that empowered product team using kind of product discovery practices. So it's a bit of a watch out if you're still kind of operating in that way. This is my favorite red flag, because I see it just so much in many kind of different products, is that there becomes this like relentless focus on user acquisition. So the marketing team just spend more and more money trying to throw more users into the top of the funnel. So you honestly, you see it everywhere. And the issue is that you never address your retention problems. So you've got this leaky bucket and no kind of sustainable business really. And then you have this, which is, I think, one of the biggest learnings actually for me, was when you don't really understand your metrics or you don't have the right ones. So Sometimes it's that your product was one thing and now it's become another, and maybe the metrics you've got for your success metrics might have changed. But then I think the more dangerous thing is when you are looking at your graphs in your analytics platform and you've got things going up and going down, but you don't know why, and you start to sort of speculate, oh, I think it's because of this, I think it's the cannibalization of other teams, I think it's because of some user acquisition, but you don't know for sure. So yeah, it's a bit of a red flag if you really don't know what's going on with your product, you're not sure what's driving growth, you're not sure what's driving decline, so it's very difficult to grow a product if you're not sure how it achieves growth. And then this is a really sad one that can happen like in corporates and startups, is when you lose touch with your users. So you might have had really great research at the start and done lots of work with agencies, or have a nice fancy user testing tool. But as time has got on, you start to do less and less. So you rely on old research, or you might be a really data-driven organization. You might just project your own assumptions over the research. And then what can happen in a big organization, in a corporate, is that you start to rely on second-hand research. So like the customer experience team might be doing something on well-being. So you think, well, I guess we'll use some insights from that kind of second-hand research, but you're not really speaking to your users very regularly. And then this is the classic, because it happens everywhere. It's Vine, it's Pebble watches, mini disc players. It's where the market changes without you realizing. I think it was one of my least favorite tasks as a product manager, is doing competitor analysis. But if you don't do it, you're kind of putting your product at risk if you don't know what's going on around you. Right, so what happens next is the symptoms start appearing pretty rapidly. Your budget is steadily reduced. It becomes harder and harder to make a case for resource. You kind of lose your C-level champions as well. And then if you've been like the golden child, which we definitely were at Bupa for a time, you realize that you're not that golden child anymore. And then somebody says this to you: we're going to keep you guys going, but with the lights on. And this is not a phrase you ever want to hear as a product manager, because it means you're in real trouble. Your product is pretty much now on life support. But despite all this doom and gloom, I've had a lot of time to reflect, on the kind of 5 years now since this product was shut down. And I've had a lot of experience at Flo, and I've also gone through some hard times with my own product at Flo. So this is what I've kind of learned, and this is what I would do differently, and this is what I would do in that situation. So there's two quite hot topics in product at the moment. It's kind of continuous product discovery and growth-led mindset. So I think a blend of these two things works quite nicely to dig yourself out of a hole like this. So first of all, it's important to really unpack the problems, because you're not starting from zero here. You don't need to write a product strategy from scratch. There's 4 or 5 years of experience in a product team here. So it's really important to kind of go through with your product team, work out, where you've got problems, solutions, processes, opportunities, and just put it all down. Then I clustered all the problems together. So you kind of do this exercise to try and find where those problems are. And you can use something like the 5 whys to find the kind of root causes of where some of these problems are. And it's quite interesting that you can often flip a root cause and create a business goal out of that. Then it's important to get those business goals and make sure it aligns with your company strategy. This is 100% where we went wrong with Bupa On Demand, because we were completely going against the main business in terms of what we were trying to do. We were going to cannibalize revenue from actually 2 Bupa businesses with what we were doing. So of course we kind of started to lose that kind of senior support. At Flo, we have OKRs. So And that means that the company sets its OKRs and revises them every 6 months. So it's really super clear for me as a PM with what the business is trying to do. And so I can align my product strategy and my OKRs with the company OKRs. And so often for me, what I'm doing is aligning it with in-app trials, which is kind of the main company OKR that we align my product team to. So it means that we're protected from this kind of mistake with the way that we're set up. Then I also, within my own team at Flo, I kind of changed the way the product team work over the last 2 years. So I've changed the way that we're now a kind of hypothesis-led product team. So in order to do that, what I had to do was, again, really understand the last kind of 4 years, 5 years of the chatbot Flo, and look at all of the hypotheses that were there, because there were so many from like all over the team, including all the engineers. There was a lot of hypotheses going on. And what you have to do is understand which hypotheses have some evidence for them and which are completely gut feel. And so you can look for the evidence, you can look for whether it's analytics or data, or whether it's qualitative research, or it might be market intel, and start to really understand where you've got strong hypotheses. And so really in this situation, you want to go for the hypotheses that have some evidence to support them already, and leave the ones that are completely gut feel at the door for now in this situation. Then I've created sort of 4 hypotheses for growth. And so every quarter, what I do at the moment is I have like 4 hypotheses that we concentrate on. Maybe you might consider that potentially a bit too much. But often what I find is we have a hypothesis and we run a bunch of experiments on it, and then we find it doesn't work. Then we kick it out and we bring in something else. We're literally kind of going through. When you find something that does work, you start to build on that and run more ideas, more experiments on it. And that's, I found that to be like super, super useful. And then I've done this exercise twice for my product team as well. So this is the Teresa Torres book that probably has been mentioned here before, which is all about continuous product discovery habits. So you can build an opportunity solution tree. And again, it's so important to just map out all of the opportunities that you have, and then look at the backlog of everything that you've tried and all of the solutions. And you can start to really, again, see a clear picture of where you want to focus. The nice thing about this is similar, I guess, to the hypothesis area, but you're doing it from the kind of user point of view. You're looking at all the user needs. Where have you run experiments like this before? So yeah, it's a really useful book to read. There's also a nice little blog article as well that you can have a taster of this as well. Then I think it's important to kind of fix the problems. So to try and bring those customer feedback loops again. So often, like if I'm speaking at an event, I'm very much aware that not everybody has fancy user testing.com style tools. Like they are a lot of money, but there are ways to get user feedback without spending lots and lots of money. And so, yeah, we didn't have, at the start of Flo, we didn't have a lot. So we were using things like our customer support channel. We have a Slack channel, which just blasts feedback out and it tags the chatbot so we can get all of that through. I set up CSAT in the chatbot so that users can feedback on their experience. And then we're lucky as well. People are very vocal about Flo on Twitter. So you can really find, again, a lot of great user feedback there. And then with our user researcher who's embedded in my team, we do research projects with her about once a month at the moment. I'd love it if it was once a week. That's something to aspire to. But we're slowly kind of increasing that and being able to hear from our users. And then it's time to fix all the data problems. So really, this is where you have to really pour your resources in to understanding what's going on with your product. So think about where your big data gaps are for your product. If these are some examples, but things like what drives sign up, what drives conversion, what drives long-term retention. It depends on what your focus is, but trying to figure out where those big gaps are, trying to figure out what's going wrong and what you need to fix. And then lastly, it's about building out an empowered product team at this point. It's ironic that often at this point, people try and shut you down, but you need to kind of get ahead before that happens. Because the problem of being a product manager without all of these roles is that you're trying to do it all by yourself. And it's just not scalable. You're going to really struggle to do product strategy and delivery at the same time. But when you have all of these roles surrounding you, you're not alone anymore. And that's a big difference for me, because I didn't have any of these sort of roles within the team I had at Beeper. I just used to do everything. But this is what enables me to be able to like grow the team and grow what we're working on. It's by having all of these different people with different skills that I can kind of collaborate with. So finally, this is my takeaway of what you should be doing if you're feeling worried about your product based on what I've just said. So this will be my action plan for you. So yeah, focus on your kind of opportunity solution tree. Get that written, then get together a strategy and your business goals and go into the C-level and really paint that vision to them. So really kind of pitch it to them. It's really important. Make sure you understand your data and then build that business case and really align it with the organization. Based on that, I think your product can then have a very long and happy life ahead of it. Thank you.